introverted noise. Hurry up, Daddy.
Let's do it.
Rolls out to the right. 5 seconds to go in the first half. Dante fires deep to the left. Moss caught it at the 11, but now he pitches it to Mo Williams. Touchdown! You gotta be kidding me!
All right, and welcome back to another episode of the Climbing the Pocket podcast. I am your host, Jason Brown. You can find me on Twitter at BrownJason. And we're mixing things up today. We mixing and matching from the Climbing the Pocket family. I almost started things off by saying, hello, let's go. Because we got our man, Flip Mozzie, hanging out today, stepping in. JR got his hands full for the foreseeable future here. Prince is at an acting class. So we called in Flip to help us out today. Flip, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well, man. Jason, always an honor to be on the main pod. So hopefully I'll do my best Yankee impression. I don't know if I can replace JR, but
there we go. Africa unite. There we go.
Yankees easy to replace.
And my man, Miles, I must say, good to have you on, but you are sounding a little more refreshed this week than you have the last couple of times you've been on the pod. What's going on, man?
Trying to, I guess, get as much rest as possible.
Yeah, how much time you got left?
2 weeks.
Woo!
Oh, man.
Boy. 2 weeks.
Yeah. Don't tell my wife, though.
Are you ready, though? Are you ready?
I mean, is anybody ever ready?
But, have you actually assembled the furniture and stuff? Have you at least done that stuff now?
The crib and all that's all done. I got to get the car seat into the car, though.
Yeah, go on and get that done. You got your bag packed, ready to go?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, look at you.
Wait, you're not on call yet, are you?
I mean, technically.
Y'all going on walks every day now? Is she at that point?
No. No. Had an appointment the other day, so she's all right.
Okay. All right.
As all right as she's gonna be.
Enjoy this rest, man.
I mean, I'm so busy at work. There's no such thing as rest.
Well, you seem to have crossed all the way through, because there was a while there where it seemed like work was really beating you down, and you seem to have made it all the way out the other end now, where you're good.
And now I just have a client presentation 2 days before my kid's born, so it's no big deal.
Got to get that grind.
Right.
The baby's gonna show up early. Don't worry.
I know. I can only hope.
Well, all right, we're gonna get into it here, and it's fun having Flip on, because Flip very often has takes that are very close to diametrically opposed to the takes that often pop up on this show from myself, from Miles, from others. So it's gonna be fun tonight, and we decided that since we had Flip on, we were gonna run through some of the topics that we have, I'll say argued, because it's not that serious, but debated most fiercely on the timeline or in the group message in recent weeks, or even months in some cases. So what we're going to start off with first is something that popped back up again today, and it was a conversation that we had a little while ago about Zim's leadership style, calling players out in the press, and how that played. Xavier Rhodes, like the few tweets that basically were saying that Zim was pointing the blame at other people other than himself, and that
was a few months ago, though. Right?
Yeah, that was a few months ago. So a few months ago, it seemed anyway that Xavier Rhodes was not appreciative of the way that Mike Zimmer called him out in public. But then, we're back. Everyone's back to work. Everyone's a happy family. And Xavier Rhodes switched his tune up a little bit today. And when he asked about it, he actually said that he appreciates Zim being hard on us, being tough on us. He only wants greatness out of all of us. So, Flip,
let's go.
You kind of seem to be in the camp of, you're good with some of the public call out, so long as the person doing the calling out is being honest. I guess, what are your thoughts now? It's the first time we've had you on the pod to really talk about this, but now in the wake of Rhodes kind of reversing course a little bit, what are your thoughts on the whole thing as it pertains to how this was all handled?
Yeah, I mean, what Zimmer does, I think it causes a lot of stress amongst, the media and the fans, how he's calling out the players, tells the media this player isn't stepping up, and then the media goes straight into the locker room, goes and interviews that player, minutes, maybe a couple of days after he makes a comment. And that I can see how people think that gets on these players' nerves, but at the end of the day, you just got to give Zimmer some credit and some trust. He knows his team. And what we're seeing here with Xavier Rhodes is exactly what I'm talking about. Zimmer knows how Rhodes is going to respond from that type of criticism. And I actually think it's kind of nice that we get to see it outward. I mean, he could be doing that all behind the scenes, but you see a Zimmer ask more of a player, and a player, because he believes in what Zimmer has built here in Minnesota, he's saying, yes, you know what? I'm not going to complain anymore. I'm going to step up because that's what my coach is asking me to do.
All right, so Miles, obviously, you have taken a counter position to, I guess not really fully a counter position, but you've taken kind of a different stance on how it goes with how Zim will sometimes approach the players or call them out, publicly. I guess, what are your thoughts on what Flip has to say about it?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm not against a coach showing tough love or being open, not being critical to a player. I have no issue with that. I think that's a lot of coaches' mentalities. I think the best coaches are the ones that really adjust the way they approach players. They don't approach every player the same way. They approach them based off of their relationship with them. And I think, like to Flip's point, with Xavier Rhodes, it's a really good, tight-knit relationship. So Zim might feel that he can come in and say and be a little bit more open about that criticism to other people outside of Xavier. And I think some of those tweets and stuff that Xavier liked after some of those open comments that Zim made, I mean, I can't speak for Xavier, but I would assume that would probably be some of that. He didn't like Zimmer saying that stuff to the media. I mean, there are some conversations you don't want your coach to be telling the general public that you're talking about behind closed doors. That's just like I said, though, everybody's different. I can't 100% say that's Xavier's stance, but that, I mean, for me, I could say I have no issue with the coach when I played. I've had coaches say things. They say a lot of things, a lot of critical things, and that's fine. I've never had any issue with it. I would have had a problem if a coach were to say some of those things that we had talked about behind closed doors to the public, because to me, it's none of their business what's said between us behind those closed doors. But I understand some of the Zim pretty much trying to light that fire under Xavier, and he believes that relationship's strong enough that it really wasn't a problem. But I do think that Zim's problem, in a sense, is sometimes he doesn't have a filter, and I'm okay with that at times, but he doesn't have that filter. He doesn't. He can't lie, and that's not a problem either. But he doesn't have a tactful way of approaching the media. So when he gets asked direct questions like, what did you think of Xavier Rhodes' season? He's not going to really hold back. And I think there's times where maybe he should hold himself back a little bit. Not that he can't criticize or can't say Xavier needs to have a better season. I don't think anybody would have an issue with that. I think it's more around getting into some of those details that I don't think the general public needs to hear.
Yeah, and that's generally where I've come down on it. Like, I'm generally of the mind that leaders should praise publicly and do the criticisms behind closed doors. And I guess where I was at with it is that Zimmer himself has acknowledged that he can be a bit emotional off the cuff, maybe say things in ways that he shouldn't in press conferences, or reveal information that maybe would be best kept behind closed doors. And so that's why I also, as Zimmer has talked about the things that he needs to grow in and do better as he grows as a leader and a coach and all of those sorts of things, this is one of the things that he himself has brought up as something that he wants to be better at. So yeah, I guess Flip, I'll flip it to you. That's terrible, but I'll turn it over to you, Flip, with Zimmer himself calling out the fact that sometimes maybe he does say things in a way that are counterproductive for him, and maybe he does need to go and do fence mending and things like that, because he does sometimes shoot it a little too straight or come off the cuff or let family business get out into the open or whatever it might be. I guess, does that weigh into the way that you think about it at all? Because it is apparent from my perspective, we don't know everything going on with Xavier Rhodes, but he didn't like it at the time. Barr and others have made it very clear that they didn't like not the criticism itself, but the fact that the criticism was made public in the way that it was. that doesn't weigh into your evaluation of kind of how it all flows or how it all works, because the players themselves are saying that they don't love it when it gets out of the family.
Yeah, so we got to make two things clear. Number one is I'm not saying the players shouldn't be angry. Like 100% those players were angry. They had a right to be angry that this is getting aired out in public. What I'm saying is Zimmer is okay with his players being angry at times, even at him at times. And if he's able to manage them through that anger and get them to play better because of that anger at times, then that's ultimately what matters as the end result.
But do you think it's really, I guess my follow-up question to you then is, do you really think that it's that calculated with Zim? Because it feels like a lot of the times where he says something that gets himself into trouble, it's like it's in the heat of the moment, kind of off the cuff type of thing? Or do you think that more often than not, really, maybe he's he's playing it coy, and it's actually kind of a longer term plan, and he's pulling one over on all of us?
No, I don't think it's calculated at all, but he talks to these guys every day. And so if one of those players, if Xavier or Anthony is going to go to him and say, I don't like what you said about me in the media, they have that conversation right then and there. I don't think it's simmering. There's hatred that's unknown. I think there's just some anger at those comments, and these issues that we talk about are resolved rather quickly. And the other thing about Zimmer working on his leadership and changing his style, y'all, this is Mike Zimmer we're talking about. This isn't some green new coach. He's been in the league a long time. The guy is not going to change this leadership style. He's not going to change a lot of other things about the Vikings that sometimes people hope for. I mean, being down in Dallas, listening to Jason Garrett, he's probably not the best example, but Jason Garrett, one thing that stuck with me about Jason Garrett is, people are always asking him about his sideline manner. And his response has always been, you know what? I understand that maybe my mannerisms, how I emote, isn't what people expect out of a coach in good times or in bad times. But one thing I'm not going to do is I'm not going to change who I am, because I'm not going to be good at being somebody else. The best way for me to go forward, for me to coach his team, is by being myself, by coaching in my style. That gives the team the best chance to win. And that's the same thing with Mike Zimmer. If he's going to try to go in there and be like a player first coach, be friendly with them, not be honest when honesty has gotten him this far in his career, then it's not going to work for the Vikings. He's got to stick to what he's been doing, and it's going to get ugly at times, and there's going to be criticism at times. But at the end of the day, we've got 46 wins over the last 5 years, including that first 6 and 10 year. I mean, that's almost 10 wins a season for 5 years. That's a pretty good run in Minnesota.
Yeah, no doubt Zim's one of the best coaches the Vikings have ever had. But I don't love the idea that there's not places that he can be better. And I would hope that, yeah, he is the way he is, but some of the way that he is the reason that it took him a little bit longer than maybe others to get to the spot where he got an opportunity to coach in the first place. And yeah, I think some of the criticisms are valid. There are things that he can potentially do to work on some of those passionate moments, I guess we'll say. And I hope anyway that he's not just, this is how I've always been, and so that's what it is, and I don't need to work on getting better at anything. I hope that he's continuing to look for opportunities for growth. But all in all, in terms of how we look at the Zimmer era overall, I don't see how anyone could look at this era and, as a general rule, be unhappy about it based on what we've all experienced over the majority of our lifetimes as Vikings fans. So
any look outside of the last 5 years, man. Any look, we've been through the ringer.
We've been through the ringer, but I mean, it's been worse. It's been worse. But okay, so we got that. Miles, do you have any other points you want to get in about the Zimmer thing, or are you good?
I'm pretty good about it.
I was about to go back through read your tweets today because Ed got you fired up all over again about it, but then that just kind of shut down. So no other points you want to fire off, or you good to go?
No, I hit off what I needed to.
Okay, well then we're gonna talk about your favorite topic, Miles.
Fine.
We're gonna talk about your favorite topic. We're gonna talk about running backs.
Yes. Oh,
I've heard some people say running backs are actually the best athletes on the offensive.
Jason, this is built for you.
Yeah, but I thought running backs were the best athletes. That's what I've been told. They had the most skill on the football fields, why they touch the ball the most frequently. That's what you learned when you play football as well, right, Miles?
Yeah.
Yeah. But Flip, again, you're here, so we got to talk about this. Vikings drafted a running back in the 3rd round, and I need you to tell me why. Help me understand, because I don't.
The Minnesota Vikings drafted a running back in the 3rd round because that is the way this team is built. This team is built with strong defense, efficient offense, and that is not changing. They're not going to become this high-flying passing team.
You just said efficient offense, so why are they drafting running backs, though?
Man, because every efficient offense in the league right now has one or multiple running backs, typically mid to late round guys, but multiple running backs who can feature in, who can provide the offense with diverse skill sets, who can solve whatever down and distance the offense is dealing with. And I think there was an impression going into the draft that Dalvin Cook was going to be our 90% carry workhorse, that Amir Abdullah and Mike Boone would be fine backups. And drafting Alex Mattison tells us maybe that's not the case. Maybe Dalvin Cook isn't set up for 280 to 300 carries in a year. Maybe we still don't really know what we have in Mike Boone. And so if you believe either of those two things, you got to get a running back. You got to get a good running back who can come in and at least contribute in year 1.
So from that perspective, because this is one of those things that I am interested in your take on, and it's one of those things that can be a little bit difficult to get through or nuance with the character limitations on the timeline.
100%.
But how much does the individual skill level of that running back matter in comparison to what's going on from a surroundings perspective? And just I guess to kind of talk through what I'm working on is like Dalvin Cook, very talented, actually led the league in evaded tackles per touch, but his yards per carry were terrible because his offensive line was awful and the offense wasn't particularly efficient. So Dalvin Cook at the surface didn't look great, but everyone who's ever watched him from college through to the pros, like Dalvin Cook's a very good running back. The Viking situation, this was one that did not allow him to showcase his abilities. So bringing in a guy like Mattison, like how much does it actually matter that he's maybe a little bit more skillful or maybe a lot more skillful than like a Mike Boone or one of the other guys that had been here, versus everything else that goes into how a running back performs from week to week?
I'm not going to say it matters a lot, but it certainly matters. I mean, you look around the league, you see Damian Williams go in Kansas City. You see CJ Anderson come off the streets and perform for the Rams. And offensive line is definitely one of the primary things that's going to lead how successful your running back is. But that doesn't mean that you can just throw any bargain bin guy behind these running backs. And what we've seen is teams that don't go for that highly touted running back are starting to put together these strings of mid-round value picks behind great offensive lines. And that's how you're building. You're not just going to, take Joe Schmo off the street and put him behind an elite offensive line and expect to see success. They still have to have some skill at the position. They still have to have some experience in all phases of the game for you to be able to rely on them, because typically when you're running the ball, it's in some important situations. You need a touchdown and you're on the 1 yard line. You need a 3rd down conversion. You're trying to run out the clock. And so to just throw in these guys, that's not going to work every time. Maybe you've got a 7th round pick, and if he fails, you've got a 5th round pick you can go to. Maybe you've got a Todd Gurley, and if he gets injured, you've got a a Malcolm Brown and a CJ Anderson to go to. It's more of a stable approach with options rather than just having guys off the street.
Well, I mean, in CJ's case, they did kind of get him. They did kind of get him off the street at the buffet line and brought him right out there, and he was balling.
But we see the Rams going back into the draft, getting another mid-round running back. We see the Patriots have drafted several day 2 day 1 and day 2 running backs. We see Kyle Shanahan in San Francisco going out and signing all the running backs. This is a trend that we can't just ignore.
Is that enough teams for it to be a trend?
It's all the innovative offenses in the league. I mean, those are the ones who are apparently looking at the analytics, looking at the data, and trying to find inefficiencies on how to capitalize, how to increase their offensive effectiveness.
Okay.
I guess my question is, in looking at the 49ers and the Patriots as prime examples, they use a running back, the RBBC, you know, the running back by committee. Running back, yeah, I said that right. They use that, but so I guess I struggle if you're going to use 3 to 4, even in maybe in some cases up to 5 running backs at a time. Why do they need to truly invest so much? Whether it's, you know, in the 49ers case, cash, in the Patriots case, through draft picks. To me, I just don't understand why you need to keep investing. Either whether it's, you know, draft mid to high draft picks or money to bring in that many running backs when you could do that similar thing and probably have similar efficiencies and not have to invest as much, whether it's later in the draft or, you know, spending less in free agency. I guess I just don't understand. They make it such a deal now. They understand the statistics tell them and the analytics tell them they don't need to invest this heavily, that much capital, but yet they continue to do it. So I don't know. I don't understand it.
I think one example that most people don't usually look at is the New York Giants. And the New York Giants did the exact opposite of this. They went out, they got Saquon Barkley, you know, in 4th overall, and people hated on the pick.
2nd overall, which is
second overall, and people hated on the pick. And I understand the hate for it, but let's look at what the New York Giants did before they drafted Saquon Barkley. The Giants went a decade without spending a high draft pick on a running back. They had Ahmad Bradshaw in there, and he got injured. He was a relatively high pick. But other than that, they tried to string together all these 4th round picks, all these 5th round picks into a competent running game, and it didn't work.
I'm sorry, Flip. We have breaking news here. Breaking news. Because it looks like we have a visitor into this recording here. We have someone in here. We got Pops in the crib.
Oh, yes.
What's going on, my man? JR, QB1, how you doing? How you been? And how are you on this podcast right now?
So there was a brief intermission between the spit up and boo boo Olympics here at the Reed household. So I figured I'd come in and check on you guys for a couple seconds. While I have time.
Well, thank you. We just out here talking.
We've already gotten back to work too on Twitter.
The work never stops. How's it going, man? Like, it's the first time we talked to you since obviously, you know, football can go on the side for a little bit, man. Talk to us. Tell us how it's going with, the new additions and the new life that you're living right now.
It's good, man. Best day of my life. Nothing I've ever experienced before. And I ain't gonna lie, I broke down. You know, I understand when people say, like, bringing a child into this world, like, there's no feeling like it. And the girls came home this morning, or yesterday morning, I should say. So they're very healthy. Everything looks good, and mama is resting peacefully every single day. So I can't complain.
And that's a beautiful thing. Did you have a moment there where it was just you and them, where they just kind of left you?
Yeah, I did. The skin to skin thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a beautiful moment, man.
Yeah, man. It's amazing. Miles, it's coming for you, man.
It's coming.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to stop by and say hello. I'm gone now, so.
All right, man. Well, JR, thanks for coming through, man.
Yep.
And hold it down, bro.
Yeah, right. Keep killing it, man.
Yep.
All right, well, Flip, I don't even know what you were talking about before JR came here. I'm not gonna lie. Something about running backs. I'm sure it was very important. Can you find the thought and bring it back?
Yeah, I can bring it back. What I'm trying to say is, if you look into it, there are several teams who are trying to do the bargain bin approach with running backs and failing. And we've got some great examples of how it works, but it doesn't always work. So we should consider that when we see teams moving into the 2nd round, moving into the 3rd round to get their guy.
But to the point that you made, and I want Miles to hop in because one of the things you did say is that the offensive line is going to be one of the big parts of what makes you successful. And so when I look at the Vikings and how they have constructed this team, yes, they spent a lot on the defense, but the type of offensive line that we're building is not a big, powerful, mauling type of offensive line. And we invested a bunch of money at the quarterback position, and our best players are wide receivers. So with those kind of elements there, where we have an offensive line that seems to be built for pass pro, we have an expensive quarterback who's supposed to be the piece to take us to the next level. We have Adam Thielen, we have Stephon Diggs, who are our best players on offense. I guess, Miles, from your perspective, just kind of knowing those facts, which direction would you have gone in that mid round to help with maybe try to take this offense to another level versus bringing in, as you said, a player who's just going to take a small percentage of those snaps on at a fairly low value task, running the ball?
Yeah, I mean, so I would have gone. I mean, they went offensive line in the 4th round, and I think the guy they got, Drew Samia, I had a day 2 pick on, a day 2 grade on, so taking him in the 3rd round, I would have had no issue with. So in all honesty, if hypothetically, let's say they took Drew Samia at 102, and they came back and took Alexander Mattison in the 4th round, I mean, you're kind of doing the same thing. They got the 2 guys they likely wanted, so I have no issue with that. My biggest issue outside of in addressing running back in the 3rd round was I don't prioritize an RB2 over a wide receiver 3. And I understand getting a guy like Irv Smith, currently having Kyle Rudolph on the team. I mean, we'll see how that plays out. I expect him to be here, but you never know. With that, I mean, I expect them to be in more 2 tight end sets. So maybe just keeping 2 wide receivers on the field rather than I think they had 3 receivers on the field over 50% of the time last year. I would expect that number to be significantly lower, which I have no issue with if that's the strength of your team and that's kind of how your offense is built. My worry is what happens when you get into a situation, or if you do get into a situation where one of Thielen or Diggs gets hurt, misses some time, or whatever it may be. Who replaces them? Because they currently don't have another receiver on the roster that I personally feel comfortable could step in and competently replace any kind of production that Thielen or Diggs brings, and that talent level. So that, I guess, that's where my biggest worry is. You don't really have a true 3rd receiver that can step up if you need somebody to, and it's just been a problem for me. Just like O-line, offensive line, just like quarterback, we've seen this front office. They don't address certain positions high until they become a need, and then obviously that's where some of that comes into, where you run into situations where you reach on players and whatnot. But we don't need to go down that. But for me, I don't have it off the top of my head here of who was all taken in the 3rd round, of maybe what guys were available.
I mean, your man Hakeem Butler was the next pick, so I know that probably hurt you just a little bit.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, I would have they could have taken him. They could have taken. Let's see here, guys. I mean, Hakeem Butler. Where is it here? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just some of my issues. Shoot.
I mean, let's be real here. Are we really saying that a receiver in the 3rd round would be able to replace Diggs or Thielen if they get hurt?
I'm saying
I think he's saying that a receiver in the 3rd round would have a receiver that was drafted in that spot, especially in this draft with the way the receivers kind of were pushed down the board a little bit, would have a higher likelihood of replacing a Thielen or a Diggs than, I mean, like Chad Beebe.
Right, like Chad Beebe, Laquan Treadwell. Obviously, we know that's that's not going to happen. Jordan Taylor. I mean, what do we know about Jordan Taylor? What has he done besides be hurt?
Did he play with Peyton Manning? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, Peyton Manning gave him good remarks, so that's cool, I guess. But then also, so then you're also relying on 2 7th-round draft picks and some guys that were UDFA's last year. I guess that's just
Big bets.
So what was that?
I'm just saying those are big bets, and
that's more of my concern is like if they weren't going to go out and get a veteran wide receiver. I mean, I know they got Taylor, but someone that like to me like a Jordan Matthews would have been a great guy to bring in and be that third receiver, that good rotational player that can play inside and out. Kind of looking for that, but who's also cheap. What close to that veteran minimum. That was kind of I guess what if they're not going to do it in free agency. You'd hope that they would address some of it in the draft, and they didn't really want to do that. And so to me, yeah, like you said, that it's a big bet because you're hoping and expecting that Diggs and Thielen play 16 plus games. And like I said, I'm fine with the 2 tight end set and going 2 wide receivers more often than 3. I just look at what's the situation that happens behind them, because I believe Mike Boone and Amir Abdullah could step in and competently play a decent role if Dalvin goes down in this offense because of the scheme and kind of I trust a guy like Mike Boone to be efficient enough to carry the ball 15 to 20 times a game if he had to for a short stint. So I don't know that's where my biggest like issue is with it, I suppose.
Okay. All right. And I feel like this is one of those things we're never going to come to a full consensus on. So we're going to keep it moving because you talked about something there that JR has also mentioned. Many others have said that maybe what the Vikings are looking to do is go to more 2 tight end sets. Maybe Irv is being looked at as that wide receiver 3, but there's that other person that we're not really sure of yet. Maybe he'll be there. Maybe the Spark God will take his appropriate place as tight end 1. That was for you, Flip. But yeah, as we're going forward here, Kyle Rudolph, the drama continues, be it the hoodies or the press conferences, and he's here. He's spoken to the media. Flip, what are your thoughts on where we're at right now with the Kyle Rudolph situation, and what is your prediction on how it all ends up playing out?
I had this dream after they drafted Irv Smith of him and Kyle Rudolph playing together. And Irv Smith has even voiced this himself. We have the potential to be one of the best 12 personnel packages in the league, one of the best tight end groups in the league. And you lose all that if Smith doesn't perform in year 1. And also if Rudolph isn't here in 2019. And for the leap that this offense has to take in a critical year, it just strikes me as clear that Kyle Rudolph, even though, we all agree he's average, that he's valuable to the Vikings. He's more valuable than just an average tight end is because of what the offense is trying to accomplish in 2019. That's why, there's no way they cut this man. And if I had to put money on it, I think they go ahead and extend him because he wants to end his career here. Irv Smith Jr. is 20 years old and is going to take some time like all rookie tight ends do. And pairing them is by far the best thing for the team.
Is Kyle Rudolph average? Or do we as Vikings fans maybe overvalue him a bit because of the endowment effect? Like, because obviously it's been all over the Twitter feed, especially today, where you had first the PFF account tweet out his the grades over the course of his career, and then you had Nick Olson, kind of highlight Kyle Rudolph's receiving grades, but also the ranks that corresponded with those. And you had a Reef kind of take a look at it from a yards per route run perspective, and in really none of those metrics outside of I think 2 years throughout his career does he show up as above average. In most of the years, he's pretty comfortably below average when you're looking at the grading or the yards per route run, et cetera. And it's just a given. Everyone's pretty much acknowledged Kyle Rudolph can't run block very well. So is he like? I understand what you're saying that rookie tight ends generally don't perform that well. David Morgan, even slower than Kyle Rudolph if we're talking about stretching the seam or that sort of thing. So there would obviously there would very likely be a step back at the tight end position. But just given the fact that Rudolph really hasn't performed even as an average tight end, how big of an impact do you suppose that would be, especially if that was offset potentially with replacing Rudolph with another veteran player that could help out someplace else on the team? And I'll flip that to you.
He's incredibly average, below average pass PFF grades, below average run blocking grades, below average in yards per reception and yards per route run. Then you look at success rate when the team is in certain situations when they're targeting tight ends compared to other teams in the league. The Vikings were a top 3 team in tight end success rate last year. You look at DVOA. Kyle Rudolph is a top 10 tight end in DVOA in 2018. He's average. He's got weaknesses. He's slow. He can't break tackles, but he's average. And to think that he can be replaced by some veteran off the streets or rookie tight end, that's just not true. There's going to be a drop off there. This team loses something when they lose Kyle Rudolph.
No doubt, but I guess what I'm like, I wouldn't even argue that point that the likelihood is that the team would take a step back at the position if Kyle Rudolph was to be traded or cut or something of that sort. I'm just wondering if you feel like it would be such a big step back that it couldn't be offset either by signing a veteran wide receiver or bringing in a Gerald McCoy. Not going to happen, but something like that, where like that bargain free agent that no one really expected to hit the market hits the market. You swap out the money. Do you feel like we're in a situation where something like that could work, or are you kind of locked in at this point where there's really very little the Vikings can do at this point with Kyle Rudolph that would help them for the next season?
I mean, if you're asking me if I would prefer a veteran receiver 3 to Kyle Rudolph, that's a hard discussion for me. I could go either way on that, but to just cut him just for the sake of cap space for emergency spending or to spend more on the defense when the offense is the unit that needs help, I think it's clear that he's got to stay.
Okay, that's fair. And Miles, how about you? Where are you at with it at this point?
Yeah, I mean, I'd choose Rudy over a veteran wide receiver 3. I mean, especially if you look at the names that are available. I mean, I don't think any of those guys would really come in and be able to have that kind of true impact right now.
Flip, you running from the police?
You got some sirens in LA.
I was saying, boy, you really are doing your Yankee impression today.
Yeah.
He fully embraced the character. I love it.
No, that's where I'm at. I mean, I would choose Rudy in that case. I don't like the idea of. I'm okay. I have no issue with them extending Rudy. It's all about obviously the details and how they could find a way to save some cap now, but also not have to lock themselves into a guaranteed money for him moving forward, because that's important for them because they don't have any cap space next year either. So they need some of that flexibility to be able to get out of some of these contracts. And I can guarantee that's the holdup with the extension talks right now, is it's probably not offering much of any kind of guarantees next year. And to me, I personally believe the way the Vikings have approached this and how they drafted someone like Irv Smith is they plan on moving on from Rudy after this season. That's just my honest opinion about it. I don't have anything to hold to that, but that's just kind of what it seems like based off some of the moves they've made and the way that they haven't really gotten any kind of contract extension done, because we know that they offered him one, and if he's not willing to accept it, it kind of tells you everything you need to know about the way that was structured.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's like we want to move some money around, but we'd like to not give you any more guaranteed money.
When he has no guaranteed money, and
guaranteed money.
The only issue though is it becomes fully guaranteed at week 1.
Yeah.
So like Rudy's I believe Rudy's in more of a power position than people want to let on, because he knows that they don't want to cut him, and he knows that the compensation. I mean, it's kind of insulting probably for him, but the compensation for a trade isn't there, and the Vikings aren't just going to give him away. So he knows that he's in a position right now of, well, they're not going to trade me for nothing, but at the same time, they're probably not just going to outright cut me. So if I just play this out, even if they're not willing to extend me and kind of give me some guarantees for this year and probably next year, I at least know if week one hits that my $7.6 million is guaranteed.
So let me ask y'all, how much do you think they could get for Kyle Rudolph? Just player for draft pick trade. What do you think they could get?
I mean, it's got to be like a day 3 pick right now. I would assume nobody's gone higher than a 5th or 6th round pick, because it's not just trading for Rudolph, whether you like him as a player or not. It's about trading for that $7.6 million.
Yeah, I think that's where it's at. Like Kyle Rudolph, I don't think is the type of player that teams are going to outbid one another from a draft pick perspective to bring him in. So yeah, it's likely a late round pick with some team out there, some of the plenty of teams that Kyle Rudolph told us are interested in him, waiting to see if the Vikings just either cut him or do a late round pick swap or something like that just to get the cap relief. So.
Yeah, and they might even have a plan in place where they work with Rudy on a contract extension to make the trade happen. But that contract extension could be one of those where it gives the Vikings less cap relief because of the way it's structured. I was listening to Doogie Wolfson's podcast with he had a former agent on, and then they were talking about how this situation, and they talked about how the way they could, the signing bonus and all that good stuff of an extension for a trade could give the Vikings basically less cap relief, but enough to where another team would be willing to probably give you a little bit more in a draft pick because of they'd be taking on less cap. All this complicated stuff that I'm not as much into or fully understand, but I mean, there's that as well.
So
right.
So like 5th or 6th pick, we're talking like look who they got in the 5th and 6th round this year, like Cameron Smith, Armon Watts, that type of dude next year instead of
obviously Stephon Diggs.
Diggs.
I mean, obviously Stephon Diggs.
I think when you look at draft picks, you shouldn't just look at draft picks as they're only used to draft players at that specific draft slot.
I know.
But yeah, I agree. I mean, if you were just looking at it from what kind of player could they get in that specific round, we know it won't be someone of Rudy's caliber, most likely.
Dan Carlson.
Yeah.
Boom.
We don't need to go down that road.
Your words hurt, Flip. Your words hurt.
All
right. That's enough of that. As you start Dan Carlson. Okay, Flip. Actually, no, I'm starting with Miles on this one. Because, again, obviously everyone's in. Kirk Cousins talking about taking snaps from Bradbury. One of the things that I did find a bit notable from some of the coverage was that Elf is taking no snaps at center, is working exclusively at guard. Miles, what are your thoughts? What are your expectations for Elflein at this point? What do you think is his ceiling after a couple of lackluster years where you can make a case for why they would be lackluster based on injury and all those other things? What are your thoughts based on what his careers look like to date? What you thought of him coming out of the draft? Where do you expect Elflein to kind of finish from a ranking perspective as we move into this next season?
Yeah, I mean, I think coming out of college, start with him coming out of college. I really liked him as a player. I thought he fit exactly what the Vikings wanted to do heading into the 2017 season, where it was the outside zone scheme, getting a guy that can in the middle of the offensive line that can get out in space. He was the Remington Award winner. I mean, you could take that how you want to, but they don't just give some of those awards away. So you kind of appreciate some of that sometimes. So I liked Elflein a lot. I was kind of surprised he dropped to the 3rd round. I thought he was more of a 2nd round center, but all in all, I think. But you could tell that some of the issues he had were some of the strength issues and some of the reach block issues. I think he might have. I can't confirm this, but I think the way I've read and it seems is he struggled a little bit with some of the line calls, and I think some of that overall communication, because he only really played center for, I think it was one season in college before he moved over to before he got drafted in the NFL. Otherwise, before that, he was a guard. So I think he was still kind of making that transition to center. But I believe that, maybe if he had stayed at guard, he'd be in a better position for his career right now, because he could have stayed and concentrated on that. Because I think center is such a different beast than playing either of the guard positions. There's a lot more that goes on to be a center, and I believe now that he can solely focus on being the guard, that there's a lot less pressure for him. He can get out in space on screens. They'll be able to move him around a lot more. They can pull him and do all those kind of things. So I'm not going to sit here and say that I expect him to be turn into some like above average, style of a player, but I believe there's that ceiling of like or of the impact of like what you saw from a Nick Easton, maybe even like a Joe Berger style, somebody that has that position flexibility that can play all three interior line positions. But I believe that the guard positions, it makes the most sense for him because of his strengths, because he can help combo block, he can get out in space and some of those things. So that, for me, I believe it's the best move for the offensive line. You upgrade the center position, which is more important, while also upgrading your left guard position with a guy that fits a lot of fits your scheme, and he does the things that you're looking for out of a guard. I'll just say guard. So I'm excited about that aspect of it. I believe that his ceiling, I'd say maybe an average I'll say an average player. Like his ceiling at left guard this year is probably to be like a consistently average player, which I think is a good thing. So, and then Bradbury, the sky's kind of the limit for him, but we don't really need to go down that aisle. But love Bradbury a lot.
Okay, Flip, Pat Elflein. If we're looking at him, same question, but I want you to give me a current player that you like the level at which you expect Elflein to play with this move over to the guard position.
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, Miles just put it so eloquently. I didn't think I was going to have to do anything on this one. I was just taking a nap.
You're going to lean back. All right, so I'll throw some names out here, and you can tell me, higher, lower, maybe the same level. So we'll go with like Zach Martin, Marshall Yanda.
Oh, that is rosy. That is
okay. So okay. All right. Okay. We're starting tall. We're seeing where we're going here. Okay. Ali Marpet, Roger Saffold.
I think we can do that.
Okay.
At the very high end. Let me say this about Elflein is, like all the things Miles said, we brought in a new offensive line coach, an expert, a guy who's been doing it for 20 years to help him with the coaching. He's healthy now. He's moving over, so he doesn't have to deal with the line calls. Everything they've done for Pat Elflein has propped him up to succeed more than he has in the last 2 years. And so we should be optimistic, but at the same time, if he doesn't make good on that, I mean, that's on him. He's in a prove it year, no doubt.
Okay.
Well, and
Ali Marpet, I like that. We can roll with that. We can roll with that.
Well, if you look at it for Pat, he's in his third year, so ideally for him, he'd be looking at getting a contract extension, and the way the Vikings operate, looking at a contract extension after this season. I don't believe it'll happen because of the contract, the cap situation they're in. But that's the kind of thing he's playing for. He's looking to play for that second contract, and this is kind of a rejuvenated way for him to look at doing that and having his first healthy offseason in the NFL, and moving positions. That you would expect him to be able to be a lot better, in my opinion, than he was at center as left guard because of the way he's.
We certainly hope so. We certainly hope so. All right, well, gentlemen, I have the most important question of the entire podcast for you right now. And I'm going to start with Flip on this one. how upset were you, and how much has it changed your perception of him as a leader that Stephon Diggs
Dang it.
was not there at the start of OTAs?
I am getting in my car and I am driving up to Minnesota from Los Angeles tomorrow to get up there and ask Stephon what he was doing during a voluntary OT. Voluntary. That means he can take the day off with no problems. So why should I have an issue with that? Come on, I'm not going anywhere. I don't care what Stephon Diggs does with his free time. I can't remember a single player who's missed an OTA in the last 5 years, unless it was some sort of contract dispute.
Tom Brady does it every year.
What? No. That's crazy.
Brett Favre didn't show up till like halfway through training camp, and nobody batted an eye.
Where was he though? Where do you think Diggs was?
He was in DC.
Probably at a photo shoot.
Maybe. Sounds like. I mean, I know he's been doing stuff with East Bay, so maybe.
Based on his Instagram, he was standing in front of something and pouting at the camera.
Hey, I mean, it's his business though, right? Like,
it is business.
He doesn't get paid to go to OTAs, but he's probably getting paid to take those photos.
Flip, you see how immediately when you start talking about the wide receivers being extra, Miles coming there, and he's ready to do all the defending.
It's easy to be extra. Like for real, he doesn't get paid. He doesn't get paid to go to OTAs. He probably got paid to take those photos.
I mean, he might have a workout bonus in there or something. I don't know. I'll ask Ed. We'll have to ask Ed about the contract terms, but that's it. None of us care. It was just one of those things that people kept talking about because it's the off season, and we really miss football. So anything that happens related to football, we talk about and maybe make a slightly bigger deal about it than we should. But that is it. That is all. That's the show. We made it through everything. Flip, when's the next episode of 15 Minutes with Flip dropping?
Man, I was aiming for either this Sunday or next Sunday, but we're gonna go away from OTAs. We're gonna go back to 2018 and just start reviewing some of the highlight plays because there's not too much news right now, but those clips of our team running in shorts, that kind of whet our appetite. So we're gonna go back and look at the real highlights from last year.
Love it, love it, love it. And Miles,
nope,
you got nothing on the way except for a baby. So I guess that's enough. We'll take that. That'll be the work you're doing for the next while. But as I said, that's it, listeners. As always, thanks for sticking with us. Flip, thanks for stepping in. Miles, thanks for coming on. And that is it. We will talk to you guys soon. Have a good one.
Let's go Vikes.